I'm 84 years old. Most mornings now, I wake up surprised I'm still here. And almost immediately, I'm aware of how quiet everything has become. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of quiet that leaves room for thoughts I used to keep busy enough to avoid. Time feels different at this age. It doesn't stretch anymore. It doesn't feel like something you spend. It feels like something that's already been spent, and you're just looking at the receipt line by line, trying to remember why you agreed to the purchase. I'm not telling this because I need understanding. I'm telling it because I don't have much time left to tell anything at all. When I was younger, time felt endless in a very ordinary way. Not exciting, just assumed. Days stacked neatly on top of each other. Weeks passed, months passed, years passed, and nothing about that felt threatening. I thought that was just how life worked. You stayed busy, you kept moving, and time followed along behind you like a loyal dog. In my 20s, I was already tired, even though I had no reason to be. I worked full days and spent my evenings half present, half planning the next day. I remember coming home, loosening my tie, sitting at the kitchen table with whatever was reheated for dinner. I'd tell myself I'd rest later, I'd talk later, I'd live later. Later was a word I trusted completely. I didn't think I was wasting time. That's important. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was doing what grown men were supposed to do. I showed up. I paid bills. I kept promises that were written down. The promises that weren't written down were easier to postpone. My wife used to ask me small questions in the evenings. Not important questions. Just questions that opened doors. Do you remember when, or what do you think about? I often answered halfway, eyes still on the paper or the clock. I thought being there physically counted for something on its own. At the time, I believed attention could wait. My children grew in a blur. I remember their heights changing more clearly than their voices. I remember school schedules, not stories. I remember telling myself I'd make it up to them when things slowed down. I really believed things would slow down. They didn't. The years between 30 and 50 passed like a hallway with too many doors to stop at. Each year felt full on its own. Looking back, they feel thin, compressed, like they were folded together without my noticing. There were moments I could have stayed longer. A birthday where I left early. A conversation I delayed because I was tired. A phone call I said I'd return tomorrow. None of those felt like decisions. They felt like adjustments. Practical ones. That's how most of it went wrong. Not with choices that felt heavy, but with choices that felt harmless. I remember sitting in my car one evening, engine still running, watching the light in the living room window. I stayed there an extra minute because I didn't feel like explaining my day. I didn't know that moment would stay with me for decades. At the time, it was just fatigue. Fatigue became a habit. Time didn't disappear all at once. It thinned out slowly, like fabric worn down by use. One day you realize you can see through it. The first real crack came later than I like to admit. A funeral. Someone my age, someone I'd known casually. I stood there listening to people speak about him, as if his life were already sealed and summarized. I remember thinking how strange it was that a whole person could be reduced to a few stories and then carried away. That thought bothered me, but not enough to change anything. Clarity, I've learned, doesn't arrive with force. It arrives quietly and waits to see if you'll notice. I didn't. Not then. It wasn't until years later, when my wife fell ill, that time finally stopped behaving the way I expected it to. Days sped up and slowed down unpredictably. Weeks vanished. Moments became sharp. I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in decades and realizing how few new memories I was making. I sat beside her bed and understood too late that presence isn't something you schedule. It's something you either give or you don't. There are things I can't fix now. That's the truth of it. Conversations that ended early. Affection that stayed unspoken. Years I assumed were waiting for me when they were already walking away. I'm not angry about it. Anger requires energy. This feels heavier than that. I finally understand why time felt so abundant and then suddenly gone. It wasn't sudden at all. It only felt that way because I wasn't looking while it was leaving. And now, when I look ahead, there isn't much left to misunderstand.